Check 1 2 3. Check check. Check 1 2 3. Check. Check 1 2 3. Good morning and welcome all. Just waiting for a few more participants to join. Won't be long, and hope you all had a good start to the week. And just allow a few minutes for the other participants to join. Good morning, everyone. Just waiting on a few more people to join. give them a few minutes and then we'll get started. Setting the camera and then going. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on changes to workplace now and beyond. This is a very huge topic given the circumstance that we are in. Just an hour ago, Prime Minister Modi had further extended the lockdown by another 3 weeks. It's a challenging time for all of us, and I hope and I wish that each one of you are well and you're coping up with your challenges whatsoever. Okay. Now, changes to workplace now and beyond is a topic that straight away came up on my mind ever since the COVID-19 became huge all over the world, and especially here in India. And this is a pandemic that we were not prepared for. And I have said, like, pandemic is a word that I've heard before just as a theory, and I had no idea as to what it is. So thinking about that is when I came up with this topic. So I hope that you'll find this title and the program useful. Right, okay, thanks for those that are joining now. Right, okay, just a bit of an introduction. Talent Tribe is one of India's fastest growing HR business solutions company. We don't call ourselves consulting, though that's our domain, but here we are, positioned as a solutions company where we engage with our customers to find solutions. We're working along with another top automobile, textile groups, and we've been doing really well. As you can see, the last 2 years we've had a huge turnover, and majority of our consultants, the team, has come from Ernst & Young and Deloitte and from Markwell. That's the background of the team at Talent Tribe. Yes, COVID-19, the pandemic, is what that's on everyone's mind at the moment, right? So this is something which no one was prepared for, and this includes the World Health Organization, and including the superpowers, including the greatest leaders. No one had any clue as to what it is and what needs to be done. The pandemic preparedness was a document that was always there, but again, no one seems to have been prepared to the kind of the size of the pandemic that this has evolved. We earlier thought it was just regional China, and then we looked at some passengers coming, and then we thought, okay, that's what it is. But here we are. There's not a single country that's not been impacted. So that's the size of the pandemic. So we have admired some global leaders, powerful leaders, who we thought are the ones who had all the skills and excellent leadership that they can provide. And now we look at the television screens, they're all looking very lost and confused, and some of them are themselves falling sick. So that's the kind of impact this whole pandemic has gone about, destroying images that we had traditionally had. Right? So we're lucky that India has joined or had an impact which was much later than most of the countries. So we're going to look at how this pandemic has or will impact our workplaces, right? So this pandemic is not new, in the sense not COVID-19. The world has suffered many pandemics before the plague. I've heard from my mother that there have been huge pandemics where lots of people had lost their lives. But for this generation, this is, you never heard, many of us have not even heard the word pandemic, and we have no idea what it is. So here we are today, living amidst COVID-19, not knowing what the future is, absolutely confusing and completely uncertain. That's what it is. Right, so moving on. Thanks for those that have come in and joining late. We have a few people from overseas. Now, COVID-19 pandemic for businesses and for HR professionals now throws up challenges, just as it would be for anyone. So let's look at what are the priorities that we have now. As a priority for any business, for any company, it is people that are important. The staff well-being is ahead of any other. The productivity, profitability, everything should be on hold until we sorted staff well-being. The good examples that have come out of some companies that I've heard, some companies have gone about setting up doctor on call. Some have set up counseling services. Good models, like, so we can see that good companies are already getting the priorities right. So now it's all about employee wellness, making sure they get through this and they stick on with us and stay with our company. So that's what it is. So what we need to do is to make sure that we stay communicated. We communicate with each other, and we need to. I'm getting distracted by a message, and we do our team huddles, and we stay in touch. Just bear with me. I'm going to take one of the messages that have come. Someone asking whether the session has started. Yes, it has started. Well, okay. So let's move on. So, as I said, the number one priority for now is employee wellness. Employee and the staff well-being is the number one priority. So we need to make sure that we take care of the employees, not only physical health, including the mental health. So it's just not, when I say health, it's just not about the well-being in the term that all of us understand. It's beyond that. Employees are looking for stability. We hear a lot of news about companies not able to withstand the onslaught of this pandemic, and we hear a lot of information that there are lots of companies that will eventually close down, and some may not survive, and they do not have enough funds. A lot of bad news that are around, but at this time we need employees, and we need to keep them motivated, and we need to give them an element of peace in this whole pandemic, the COVID-19 that seems to be affecting each one of us. So please provide employees with more trust, and if you can, give them a sense of stability. And second priority would be to make sure that getting back to work remains one of our top priorities. We will eventually get out of this situation. No situation will remain the same. So we will eventually, if we don't know, it's going to be 3 weeks or another month, or we don't know, 2 months or 3 months time. We get lots of data from different quarters, and we don't know. It's very confusing, uncertain, but we need to be prepared. So when the time comes when you have to get started, we need to be there. There will not be enough time for us to at that time sit and plan our strategy. So it is now that we get ready to have getting back to work plan in place. So returning to work is the number 2 priority. And then I think these are the 2 priorities for HR professionals for now: the employee well-being, and also plan for them to return back to work safely, and giving them the confidence that we all are going to work together in order to make success at an individual level as well as for the organization. Right? Okay. Now, I also want to touch upon the fact that I've heard about companies thinking about downsizing or SMEs, there are a few who said we have no other option but to downsize. Just want to throw this here. Downsizing should be the last option, but bear in mind, onboarding and offboarding employees, there is a cost. So if you're trying to think that getting rid of people is your cheapest option, that may not be. But also think about the long run. Eventually, when we get back to restarting your organization, then you're going to miss these employees. Not only are you going to miss these employees, it's going to be that much harder to hire people because they will know that this is the company that got rid of people when the situation was tough. So take care of your employee branding. However fancy you may have built your brand around, just be extra sensitive to the fact that people are watching, and yeah, shedding of employees should be your last option, and not as a knee-jerk reaction now. So that will be my recommendation. Moving on, I'm still getting message from a few other participants. Let's take this message now. It won't be long. I am getting I logged in but cannot see others. Okay, we'll see that in a moment. All right. Okay, let's move on. Okay, you would have guessed it by now. We're just getting into the crux of today's presentation. It's about a big shift. We're talking about the workplace changes which has come about due to COVID. The big shift is now around working from home, remote working, and this is not something that was an option for most companies, right? So this was something that the companies had earlier in the past had kind of offered as an incentive, like, I trust this employee, so he or she may be allowed to work. Now that no longer is the case. Now this is not an option. It has now become a necessity that working from home is essential for the organization to keep going, continue with what they're doing, and to succeed. So this is a big shift. Work traditionally has been within the offices where people will come, most often within the regular time allocated, and then they'll return back home. Now that's changed. Even as we speak, people are working from home because you can't get into offices, they're locked, and you can't commute. So home has become the new office. So that's the big shift. Now that's not as easy as that is being said. Like, working from home is very easy to say, but it's got a lot of other challenges and complications, especially for HR managers. So we're going to look at a little bit more detail onto that. All right. So moving on, these are some of the challenges that working from home brings about. Of the 5 challenges that I've listed here, privacy is number 1. Like now, I'll put my camera on mute. They can't see me, but there will be occasions in offices when people work from home. People may look at what's in the background of the particular employee, and they'll start judging people based on that. It could be political affiliations, it could be a religious affiliation, an image of a god or a goddess, or a politician's image, just the way the house has been kept. Now that is being put out in public domain, people can see. So it is important that while it's difficult to filter that, but one has to make sure that you don't judge based on the image that you're seeing through your webcam or through your laptop. So you just have to be careful, and privacy is a new challenge. Forget about those little descriptors that are below. I'm sorry, I seem to have skipped that. Now, yes, stick to the topics only. Guilt and stress. Now, we heard a lot of stories where I myself have worked for a long time working from home, and this is something which I clearly can associate. Working from home creates guilt and stress. The statistics reveal that most employees try and work harder. They try and work more in order to provide evidence to the managers or to the organization that they're at work. So they often end up working more than what they would have worked in an office environment. So that has created stress for most people. Because constantly they try and work and provide evidences constantly to make it known to the managers and to the organization that they're working. So that's the other challenge. The employees should not work in that environment, so they should be free. And how that can be achieved is something we should address sooner. Now, the other challenge would be network. Network is a huge challenge for us here in India. The internet connectivity, even some of us have got fiber connections, is not dependable, and the connection drops off, the data, the bandwidth are all huge issues. Now, that can really create a challenge in terms of employee efficiency. Like, how would you judge an employee's efficiency if the network is not supportive? If you're having power cuts, if you don't have enough bandwidth, if you don't have internet connection, now it's going to seriously impact one's efficiency. So that's a serious challenge, especially for those that are here in India. And the next one is PTO, personal time is what you need to manage as well. While working from home looks easy, but this is more for the employers and for the organizations to recognize the fact that employees would still need time for their own personal activities. Some of them could be working moms who can have little children. They may have to take breaks to feed them, or the child may need the attention, or there can be a list of things that, but from an employee's perspective, it pays to plan those activities ahead and block your time off, saying that those are PTO, like where you take time off to do those activities. And employers also should not assume that because they work from home, they're going to be there available 9 to 5 in front of the computer and a laptop working and answering. Ideally, that is the expectation, but one should also recognize the fact there is also personal time that is involved, especially when you're working from home. Bandwidth is something that I already addressed earlier when I spoke about network. Bandwidth is a huge issue, not externally. When I spoke about network, I did mention about the network challenges through the telecom companies, but bandwidth internally can be a huge challenge. You can have a connection at home, but you could have multiple users, especially at times such as now. Everyone's logged in, people are watching movies, YouTube, children are playing games, and you're working as well. So it's a difficult thing to manage, but this is mostly from an employee's perspective, not how best this can be managed. If you have a student at home who definitely needs internet connection as a priority, but you can spread your time around, saying I'm going to work between 9 and 5 on this time. The students can probably work later in the evening or through the night, so you can distribute the bandwidth within your homes in order to not to have this as a challenge in terms of employee efficiency. Okay, let's move on. Thanks for those that are joining again. I'm going to look at a few messages and we'll carry on. All right, all good. Thanks for those that are joined, and I can see those that there are a few that have joined from overseas. Welcome. And okay, moving on. Working from home. Now, I've spoken enough about working from home as a priority, as an option that has been forced. It's no longer an option. Now it's a reality for employees, for the organization, for all of us to succeed. If this is an option that can work, there's nothing like it. If business continuity happens, and you can do it. But having said that, there are challenges associated working from home. I've dealt with 5 of those challenges in the earlier slide, but a few more now. Employee preferences. Now, do you have any idea the number of people that like to work from home? I would rephrase the question again. Do you have any idea the number of employees, percentage, that prefer to work from home? I was amazed at the results when I looked at the survey from Gartner, and only 10% of the global population, the global workforce, wants to work from home. It's only 10% wants to work from home. Now, wait, there's more. 10% is the global workforce. Now, let's look at specifically for India and China, both similar size. It's not 10%. It is only 7% of the employees who prefer to work from home. Now, most organizations, the employees would think most employees want to work from home, they want to take it easy, it's comfortable that way. No, it's not true. But we can understand, because working from home, as I said before, has a lot of challenges in terms of bandwidth, connectivity, privacy. But working from office, you don't have any of those. You're in a comfortable environment, your connectivity is excellent, and there's a lot of sharing of information, and collaboration is far more effective working from office. So I'm not surprised, but on the face of it, it looks like most people would prefer to work from home. But a more detailed study has proved that only 10% of the global population prefers to work from home, and for India, only 7% of the population wants to work from home. So now, what that does mean, like, that number is not going to stay there. We're not looking at preferences. As I said before, this has now become the new reality. This has now been forced on employees, forced on organizations to use this option, working from home. Having said that, the HR policies that are currently in place, largely that, as I know, for most organizations, relates to a factory or an office as a workplace. Now that's changed, that's shifted, that's gone into homes now. So that's throwing a lot of challenges, and we will see that as we go. And not to forget, we'll come back to policy soon, and not to forget about the customer. Customers, again, something which we would be looking at in detail a little later. And just moving on, we skip to some surveys here. Now, policies, as I said, has a completely different focus now. We've got security issues, we've got privacy issues. I can clearly tell you, most of the organizations don't have a policy that relates to working from home. It does have a policy. Most organizations would have around when should someone work and how someone should work. But in terms of other challenges, in terms of, as I said, policy, confidentiality, and sharing of data, and in terms of how well you present, that relates back to the customer. I'll come to that shortly. So there's a big scope. There's lots need to be done within that area. Like I said, working from home is just not one-off. I don't think, and I don't believe that at the end of COVID, it'll be business as usual. People will get back to work and they'll resume. Not going to happen. Organizations having tasted the fruits of working from home, the benefits of working from home, not having to have air-conditioned space, tables, computers, and all that. So there will be a good number of people who would now have to work from home, and so there's lots of work that needs to be done in that space, and we can certainly help you in writing policies. We've done that for a few organizations before COVID, but we as a team are already working on it, and we can help you with that. Okay, let's move on. All right, remote workplace. this is what I've been talking about the last 10 minutes, like working from home, remote workplace, virtual offices. Now, another question. Who do you think is most challenged? Do you think the managers are challenged or the employees feel challenged working from home or through remote workplaces? Is the manager or employee who feels challenged working from home? I think it's a mix of both. Both have got their own challenges. Now let's look at managers. Managers traditionally have worked in an office environment where they sit in a corner or share the same floor, and just by standing up they can make a call. They can easily say who's engaged, who's working and who's slacking. So it was through visual connectivity that they can make an assessment quite quickly, or just by walking around, looking at computers, looking at desks, looking at empty chairs. A manager can easily make a judgment straight away as to who's engaged and who's not engaged, right? And also managers in the past would look at through the shoulders of an employee, looking at the screens, and are they watching YouTube, are they working, are they chatting, or so that was more of a supervisory control, a one-on-one kind of an approach where a manager would make a lot of the judgment or assessment based on observation of what he's looking at, right? Now that has changed. In a remote workplace, a manager cannot work along with the employee on the same floor. This is in virtual office, in a distant place. The manager is probably 50-60 kilometers away, and they still need to work together. The manager still needs to manage. So that's a huge challenge for a manager. Now he does not have the freedom to make an assessment by just looking at an employee, because he can no longer look at an employee, and he cannot walk around and make a judgment. But what the managers are now doing, now that puts the challenges for an employee, because the challenges that for an employee comes out of the way. The manager now, through the remote workplace, how does he manage? So what he or she does, micromanages. They would want minute by minute remote. You'd call about 10 times in a day to check the employee is still at work and not sleeping or not moved away from the computer. That's the kind of supervision that most of the managers seem to be doing now, because they're not trained enough. They're used to managing a team that works virtually in a remote environment. So this is exactly what the employees say. Their challenges are the manager now micromanages them. While he or she was working in the office, the manager would probably give a task and would not come back again unless something goes wrong. But the feedback that we get is the managers now are micromanaging, and some even said there are far too many calls, and there's a suspicion that the manager does not trust the employee, and this is a technique that he or she uses in order to manage the employee. So this is the challenge from an employee's perspective. So as you can see, manager and employee both have challenges working in a remote environment, and it's no fault of theirs, and there's a lot of learning for the manager as well as for the employee. This is new to them, and there's a lot of training that the manager will need to undergo now in order to understand and to practice how well to manage employees and manage the teams in a remote environment. Likewise, there are skills and processes for an employee who can actually make life easier for the manager in terms of helping him manage the workflow. So having said that, both have got challenges, and both need to work together, and there's a lot of gaps in the current situation. That's because, once again, we've not been prepared for this. We've been forced into the situation, but there's a lot of learnings here, and there's a lot of opportunities. Now, but there's one thing that can really help this gap, one thing that can really help make life easier for the manager as well as the employee, is to have trust and faith. The managers need to trust and have faith in the employee that he or she is working, and that will reduce micromanaging. That will reduce the number of calls. And when I said training, I was reminded that one of the feedback that I've got from the manager and an employee as well, is they're not even been trained to have a telephonic conversation in a remote environment. So a conversation, someone said, has lasted for 2 hours, a business call. So there's a lot of structuring that needs to be done. If a manager has to make a call with a team of about 20 or 25 or employees, he cannot afford to have a call that's 2 hours. So there's a structure that needs to be followed. Business content that needs to be developed. So this is again something which will all go into the space of where we can train employees and make them more efficient, and make the process smooth and easy for the manager as well as for the employee. Let's move on. I'm going to take a few messages again. Thanks for those that have joined. The numbers have grown, and we can got some overseas people logged in as well. And let's move on. All right. Now we've talked about the challenges. We talked about the virtual workspace, working from home. Then we looked at the challenges for the manager and as well as for the employee working from remote. The biggest challenge would be from an organization context. Let's leave the employee and the manager and the challenges aside. Now, organizations have a much bigger challenge in terms of expectations. Now, how do we measure performance? Because performance is the one that really impacts business, and it's a metric that is very critical for the organization to perform, make improvement, to measure. So the number one question is, how do we measure performance? Like I said before, measuring performance was relatively easy because you could see the team, you interact with the team on a daily basis, and you have your team meetings and your team huddle, and you've got the tools, and that was relatively easy to measure performance. Now, in an environment where that's drastically changed, now working from home through a virtual office, how do we measure performance? I'll pause there for 5 seconds and let you think. Like, how do we measure performance? Most companies, most organizations, not rocket science, we know that they measure output. They measure output. So what that means is that you look at the numbers. You look at the units, and then you say, okay, he or she's done so many calls. He or she's done so many units, brought in customers, or dealt with calls, or whatever. It's just that the units that were measured often, and that's what was taken as a measure before, or more of a quantitative approach. Now that will change. That will need to change, because what we now measure would be, we need to measure outcomes and not output. The shift has to happen because we're probably no longer going to be looking at an environment where it's just 9 to 5. So people would be logging in, have a flexi approach to work, but what really needs to get done is the objectives needs to be achieved. And how will they achieve it? And when do they achieve it? Maybe there's some flexibility around that, but it's the outcome that matters. Now, if you have any difficulties in understanding the difference between outcome and output, let's take an arm southern from Chennai. I'll give you those as an example. if you look at someone who's manufacturing or retailing dosa, and someone has done 50 dosas, another unit has done 80 dosas, another unit has done 100 dosas, we'd probably say the one that's done 100 dosas has performed better. But when it comes to outcome, it's how well the dosas are made. So the guy who's doing 50 dosas is probably doing a better dosa than the guy who's made 100. So he gives probably more customer satisfaction. He probably retains more customer. He probably gets more repeat orders. So that's the outcome, not the numbers. So it's 100 dosas is an output. The 50 dosas, which has got the ability to retain customers, delight customers, and give them a good experience as an outcome. So we need to measure outcome and not output. Given that in a new situation, it's no longer in the same office, it's no longer 9 to 5, where you can have an approach and a window within which you measure. Now the window does not exist. There's probably more flexibility around when people do the jobs and when they do it. If you start measuring outcomes, that will be, in my view, the best way to measure performance. So I think I address both of those issues. What do we manage and how do we manage? What do we measure and how do we measure? And then the third would be, it's not too easy. When I said managing outcomes, measuring performance through measuring outcomes is easier said than done. So we need the right tools to do that. Now, there are lots of tools in the market. I'm talking about digital tools, not physical tools. Personally, one of the very simple tools that I use, it's a tool that's good for me and as well as for my team, is the to-do list. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with the to-do list. So it's just a list where you put dates there, and you can describe, and you can allocate tasks and build teams around that, and we can build a timeline and measure that. You know, that this is, I don't get paid for promoting that tool, but this is just an example of a tool. The number of tools that will suit your industry, your organization, but which really helps in measuring just not the output. It also helps in measuring outcomes. Now, one other measure of performance, we will also I'll also touch upon that a little later, is to how do we do it? Is to get feedback from customers, from internal customers, from external customers, and in terms of how well the employee is able to deliver or meet the expectations of the customer. That's a different set of tools again, but this is a very effective tool in terms of measuring performance and measuring outcomes. So those are the tools. And lastly, when it comes to measuring performance, we need to be real. We need to make sure that we're measuring the right thing. We'll be measuring what needs to be measured. Often in the past, in the old performance appraisal tool, we have ended up measuring lots of stuff simply because the template had it. So now we no longer need to do that. We've got tools that are highly customizable, highly flexible, and we can build that using a digital environment to measure that. So what do we measure the outcome, and how do we measure through tools that are available? And I said we need to keep it clear when it comes to measuring performance. Let's move on. We just moved from, we looked at the necessity, the need, or there's no longer an option, but it's become an absolute requirement for workplace, for businesses to engage employees through working from home or a remote working environment. And we looked at the challenges that are involved, and we also looked at how do we measure performance. So, and now we're moving on to digital transformation. So just pause there for a few seconds as we move on to the next. Digital transformation is not new. It has been there and it's been on the card for a long time. Many of the functions within the organizations have gone and embraced it. Marketing, for instance, they've become digital, and they've gone onto social media. You see them on Facebook, you see them on television, you see them on YouTube. That's how marketing has evolved. They've gone digital. And finance is now fintech. They've gone digital as well. HR is there, is trying to get there. Now, as I say, it's no longer an option. It's a necessity now. The last 4 years, I've done several speeches, participated in workshops, and every time I've had a chance to speak, my speech would be around digital transformation. I would be in and around that particular topic, and without fail, when I seek feedback in India, the single most important feedback that I get is saying, this is too much technology, this is expensive, this would suit Western economies, this will not work for us. They'll say, there's a long way, we will get there. I don't think it's now, maybe 3 years or maybe 5 years. It looks very fancy. These are some of the feedback that I had received. And I would be disappointed, because I, for one, certainly knew that for an organization to become efficient, digital transformation within the HR function was absolutely necessary. And we ourselves have made the transition before, and for some reason we don't want to expand it. The time offers, there was a time when people used to go on punch cards, and they would give thumb impressions, and all that used to happen. Now that got digitalized. Now you come in and you swipe your card, or the camera captures your face, and you already logged in. Your number of hours that you worked is monitored. If you're absent, it's done. So the payroll is digitalized. Almost for every industry worth its name is digitalized. And we've got tools like communication tools like email, and we've got websites and all that. Now HR has got lots of other tools which will really help make our lives easier. It will make the whole employee journey a lot more efficient if we can get into become part of the digital transformation. But I must say, at a personal level, I always thought HR people were not inclined, and because I belong to the HR fraternity, I would like to take or exercise the freedom to say that HR was never considered in the past to be good business leaders, because we never understood business. We would never know how to read a balance sheet. We would never know anything about budgets. We would never know what impacts of the bottom line of the company. We just continued with our role as administrator. Now that has changed, thankfully, and people have started understanding a little bit more business with the advent of business partnership, and people expanding their knowledges, and the schools, including business studies or business subjects as part of the curriculum, has gone about making that change easier. Now this is our next phase, where the HR professionals need to get into the digital space, get a little bit more savvy, understand the various digital platforms, be open in your approach towards embracing digital products. And look, the digital products are not going to kill your job. It will never make you redundant, but it will make you more efficient. So we need to, HR needs to embrace digital transformation. Now, 5 years ago, digital transformation or digitalization of HR is difficult, because if you were looking at SAP, you need a huge amount of investment. You need huge skills, very expensive skills, and every little customization costed lots and lots of money. Now, all that has changed. Now, any organization of any size can now afford a digital product, because it's all now cloud-based, and it's paid by use kind of a licenses. So an organization with just 10 or 15 people can have the most recent and the most productive tool. and you just pay by the number of users that you have. You no longer need to have an IT team. You don't have to maintain a server. You just need to get the login and you pay for the usage. So that's made life easier, and a lot of products that are there, right from the recruitment tool and up to onboarding, and to every little step of the employee journey. You've got tools, and up to the time of offboarding. So I'm an expert on digital transformation, and I've been in this space for probably about 7 to 8 years now, and I can tell you with confidence there is not a single tool which cannot deliver to meet any of the organization needs. And trust me, it is not as expensive as you think. You just pay for the licenses, and your return of investment will be far quicker. I guarantee you that. So just be open for digital transformation within the HR space. And like I said, you don't have the flexibility now. You don't have the luxury of saying it's too tech, I can't do this, I'll wait. Now it's become an option. If your employees are going to work in a virtual space, you have to have a digital tool to manage the performance, to measure the performance, and to engage with them. You need those tools. Otherwise, like I said before, the manager cannot be making those calls and looking at each employee virtually. So you need those tools, and these tools will make the difference between an organization that survived the pandemic, or even the future, whether it's relevant or the organization has gone redundant. So just make sure that you embrace digital transformation and quickly get into that space in order to survive in the new world. Just going to look at a few of the participants and the questions here. When talking about digital transformation, I've got one of the data that's come up quite recently. This is a survey that was done at the time of COVID. Now, people were expected to work from home, but in order for that to happen, one of the essential tools to have is a laptop. Now, can you believe 80% of the organizations prior to COVID were engaging with the employees with desktop as a tool? Most people go to office, use the desktop computers to engage, to work, and to deliver. Now all of a sudden that has changed. They can't take the desktops can't move, but if they had a laptop, they would have gone. Now probably there are more people using the personal laptops in order to access and to work. Now that's another area where there's going to be significant investment. Desktops will have to go, laptops will have to come and make employees more mobile so that they can work from anywhere. The definition of business process continuity has changed. It's no longer about structures, it's about people working from anywhere, having empowered employees, having the right tools, and providing the continuity of the process and the workflow. Right. Moving on, just kind of look at a few questions. Now, the next one, I've already covered this, talked about HR digital products, and like I said before, there's a number of tools now. There's not one tool. You actually have a choice now to suit the industry, to suit your budget, right from employee onboarding to offboarding. You've got a number of tools, and all these are cloud-based and affordable. So you've got a suite of products that you can test, trial, buy, and benefit. And these are all accessible using a simple laptops. Now we come to the important area. Now, working from home, with the managers and the employees, with all the challenges that they have, measuring the outcomes and the performance, and using the digital platforms, all of this has just one important centric figure, that's customers. Now, whatever that you change, be it working from offices or virtual offices, be it a cloud solution or whatever, one thing that's most important is your customers. Now, this is highly critical. I'm going to talk about more specifically for India, what challenges this provides. Now, like I said before, in all that you do, just don't look at technology, just don't look at where you work from, but make sure you keep the customer in the center of all that you wanting to achieve. At the end of the day, you need to deliver, and you need to keep the customer happy for the business to succeed. So when it comes to performance measurement, I did mention that it's important to take a survey and to take feedback from customers. Now that's critical if you want to keep your customers happy. But again, throughout the organization, throughout each function, throughout each office, throughout every home and every laptop and every phone call, make sure that that relates to satisfying a customer or providing the needs. Now this has, when you look at the background of all that I've said before, and more specifically getting into the customers, imagine if you're working from home and if you had to take a call, you don't want to hear dogs barking. If it's a video conference, you certainly don't want to see an inappropriate background. So there's a lot of professionalism that needs to be built in when it comes to customer interface. Make sure you have a quiet ambience, you have a presentable appearance, you have a good background. When I say background image, so these are very, very important in order to keep the customer happy. Right now, we so far have worked in beautiful plush corporate offices, servicing customers in the States, in the Europe, and other sophisticated countries. But now, when working from home, you no longer have that ambience anymore. It's going to be a cramped space in a noisy environment. Now, how do you provide the professionalism is a challenge. Employees need to figure out, and the organizations need to drive in the expectation and provide infrastructure and facilities how they can make this happen. It could probably be not an office, not a home, maybe a hub. We don't know, depending on the organization. But make sure that in whatever that you do, it's just not the manager that who's watching, just not the someone else who's listening. You have to make sure that whatever that you do and you say relates to a customer satisfaction. And one of the critical piece of measurement in terms of performance would be how well we meet the customer's expectation. Right. So I'm going to look at. I'm going to talk about business risks. In one of the invitations that I sent out for the webinar, I said, understand which companies would survive and which industries would close. Now, imagine India, which is kind of known to be the back office of the world, high volumes of customer call centers, service centers, whatever name you may call it, that exists in every decent city, huge offices, big numbers. Now, in an environment such as that we are in now, a pandemic, you can no longer come to office, but business needs to continue. Sooner or later, we will pick up and we'll start moving, and there will be an expectation that we would still have to work from home for a number of people. Now, the biggest challenge would be the same as what I mentioned before: your bandwidth, your connectivity, and your professionalism. Now, these are guaranteed when you work in an office structure. Now, when you have to do the same in a home environment, you don't have those three. So you got to be really, really careful. Now, the back office functions, the call centers, if the employees are going to continue to work from home, then we're going to have dogs barking, we're going to hear vendors yelling at the background, there's going to be children playing around. Now, that's not going to be acceptable by a customer. So the satisfaction, your performance efficiency will really drop down, and the vendors, the people in the States and other parts of the world will be forced to look at other countries like Singapore, Malaysia, and where they have very good digital infrastructure, the connectivity is there, the bandwidth is there, and they have the right ambience, minus the noise pollution that we have here, minus the power cuts that we have here. So these are huge challenges for the business in terms of providing customers. When you have power cuts, you don't have enough connectivity, you don't have enough bandwidth, and we have got the noise and not so professional presentation working from home. That's going to have a huge impact on the customers when we survey them, and I wonder how we're going to match that gap. Now, I'm not too sure whether all of us will go back into the same huge offices and continue to work the way that we worked before. And I'm pretty sure there's an element of employees that will still have to work from home, even without the pandemic. Given that happens, we need to make sure that we satisfy our customers despite the challenges that I mentioned to you now. It's moving on. Now, all of us know, and this is not rocket science, one of the topmost priorities would be employee mental health. Now, organizations are used to, by and large, catering to the employee's physical health. Large organizations would have a nursing or medical center where there will be doctors on call, and they would do physical examinations now and then at the time of entry, and now periodical medical checks and all that. Now, mental health is a huge issue, especially when people are going to work from remote, away from the workplace. If that is the case, now an employee rarely is going to come back and tell you he's got issues. Therefore, it's absolutely critical. I can't emphasize more the manager's role to connect with the employee frequently, periodically, to make sure the employee is well and he's in good health and not frustrated, he's happy in what he's doing. And the only way that you can achieve that and ensure that the employee got good mental health is by maintaining that connectivity. We talked about the tools, we talked about managing performance, measuring performance, but this is outside all that. Having a one-on-one conversation, just trying to understand what the employee is going through, how is he feeling, and so we need to make sure that the employee mental health is good, especially in the context of working from home. And it's difficult to visually capture that, and it's even more difficult to see that through a workflow process, but it's so much easier if you can maintain that one-on-one communication with them. All right? Let's move on. Digital infrastructure. This, in a capsule, is most of what I said previously. You know, India has a huge challenge in terms of digital infrastructure. We've got flash businesses which will match any of the offices overseas, like in the top office in the US or in the Europe. You have it here. You've got exactly the same decor. You've got exactly the same comfort. You've got the same technology. You've got the same speed, compatibility, the tools. Now, that's changed. Like I said before, we're not sure how many of those people are going to get back and be able to deliver the same volumes using the same offices. So in my view, large chunk of those employees, those offices would now have to work from home, just like the banks managers and employees do now. They don't have the luxury of those offices and infrastructure. Now it is a reality that people would now have to work from home, not only in a situation such as a COVID or a pandemic. Moving forward, that's going to be the new reality. Therefore, it's absolutely essential and important that the government, the organizations, everyone that's involved in the business have to make sure we have a robust infrastructure, meaning you've got consistent power and you've got good connectivity, you've got good broadband, you've got good bandwidth. Unless these essentials are guaranteed, it's going to be very difficult for India to survive in the new environment, because we would be found wanting. If our employees are going to work from home and they've got these challenges, power cuts and connectivity issues, then it's going to be a huge letdown, and the business will fail. And therefore, it is absolutely critical we put focus on digital infrastructure, even if we were to make a representation to the government in saying the digital infrastructure needs to be supported by them, and there's some kind of funding that needs to be there. This is critical. I can't emphasize any less. If you fail to improve your digital infrastructure, it's almost like you're setting yourself up for failure. Okay. Small. This, in a nutshell, is all that I wanted to cover today. We looked at COVID pandemic, how it has gone about changing the world, and we also know that the world will never be the same. And we looked at the challenges that has come about due to COVID. People are now forced to work from home, and we looked at the challenges that come along with working from home, the challenges the managers and the organizations have, connecting with the employees when they work from home. How do they manage performance? How do they measure performances? We looked at that, and we looked at how we can train the managers and the employees to reduce the gap, how they can build faith. And we looked at that, and we looked at the legislative changes. We looked at the HR policies that we need to be brought up to speed in order to reflect the new world. And also we looked at the challenges for the organization in terms of delivering and meeting the customer expectations, and also in terms of network and infrastructure in particular, where we need to focus, how we need to build. So that is the summary of my presentation today. I know it's difficult listening to a monologue. Next time I'll have more than one participant. We'll probably have a dialogue, and we'll take more questions. And like I said before, there's lots that we can help the organizations. We can help with training. We can help with your digital tools. There's a lot that we can do in this area. We are trained. We are specialists in HR technology, and we've been in the business. Myself, I've been with the business for 20 years. I've managed employees as big as more than 30,000 employees working for a professional services industry right across Asia Pacific. There's no way I could have managed them without working through digital technologies, using digital tools. So feel free to ask questions, feel free to email me or get in touch with me, and I'll be more than happy to help. When I say me, it's a team here. And just want to thank you for your time today. And this is Selwyn Thomas, and below is my phone number. Happy to take your call or text me or message me. I'll be more than happy to help you in any way that I can assist you. And there's my email address. That's our organization's website. And thanks for your time, and I hope that you found the presentation useful. This will be available on our website soon as a video link, and hopefully if you found this to be useful, you may want to share it with your friends and colleagues, or you may want to listen to it again at a time that suits you. So that in essence ends our webinar today. I'm Selwyn Thomas, I'm the Executive Director of Talent Tribe, and I'm glad to be part of this webinar this morning, and I'm so happy to have met so many people today. And thanks for those people who joined me today from overseas. I've seen participants from Sri Lanka, from Australia, New Zealand, and many from India. Thank you all, and goodbye until the next webinar. Stay in touch. Bye.